You're listening to the 40 Fit Radio podcast dedicated to the 40 plus community. Join us as we discuss the truth about fitness and health using science, reason, and the experiences of our host and content experts. Welcome to the 40 Fit Nation. Well, welcome back to the 40 Fit Radio podcast. I'm your host, Coach D, and welcome back to the 40 Fit Nation. Today, we're going to take another little break from talking about pain neuroscience and back pain, and we're going to talk about coach, trainer, or babysitter. And basically, what we're going to cover today is, what are some of the traits that you should look for in a coach, someone who's going to help you on your fitness journey, to help you reach your goals, to be performance and outcome driven, and to ensure that you're getting your best return on investment. And this little podcast today comes to you from an experience that I had recently and hundreds of experiences I've had similar to this. I was training in a gym that was out of town with my wife, and we were just training at a local gym in a little town up in, I won't say where, but and basically, this is a really high-end gym that I know that the fee to train there is usually fairly expensive, probably. And I was watching some of their trainers work with some of their client base. And what I noticed was there didn't seem to be a lot of directed interaction, correction in form, correction in the way the exercises were executed. There didn't seem to be a lot of education, to be honest with you, in that process. Nor did the trainer seem to really have a structured format as to what the client was going to be doing that day. If they did, they had their entire program memorized, and that might have been the case, but I don't normally find that to be the case. They should be running off of a log or some type of training journal that they can record their trainees' progress and also set and rep scheme, volume, intensity, all those kinds of things. But it got me thinking about how all of these people that are in that gym or in hundreds and thousands of gyms like that across the country that are paying for quote unquote coaching or training are potentially basically getting a babysitter. And I know that sounds funny, and I don't mean to be flippant about that or to be disrespectful to our audience, but let's face it, if you don't know a lot about fitness, then from a self-awareness standpoint, you may just not know what you don't know. And that's a dangerous position to be in, because what ends up happening is you may be being sold a bill of goods or a particular program model that's really just not effective for your fitness goals and the outcomes that you want out of your investment. And that is the key. Here on 40 Fit Radio, what my goal is as a coach and as a speaker and podcast host is to bring information to the audience, to our listening audience. And as you know, that's the 40 plus age group audience. And to bring you information that you can use to, number one, learn more about your body, learn more about your fitness program, and empower yourself with education. Number two, be able to better direct your fitness program to reach your goals and outcomes. And then number three, be the best return on your investment. In other words, if you're going to spend good money for a professional coach, let's find you a professional coach. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the value of a coach and really some of the things that you should be looking for when you're looking for a coach. What you need to know as a consumer first is that you can walk into any health club or fitness or facility or gym throughout America and be assigned a trainer or a coach, quote unquote, and that individual could have a certification, could not. They could just be calling themselves a personal trainer. But most of them will have some type of certification. They'll have something from the ASCM, the American College of Sports Medicine, or maybe the CSCS, Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist, which is from the National Association of Strength Coaches, or strength coaches. Or they could have something, some other professional term, like a Cooper Aerobic Institute certification. They could have a CrossFit certification, and they could have many different certifications within their CrossFit certification. Or they could be a starting strength coach, and there's many different other organizations. They could be a USAW, a sports performance coach. There's all these different organizations that certify and sanction the coaching certificate for those different organizations. Just because they have a title in most of those organizations doesn't mean that they really understand how to coach you. Coaching is more than having a basic educational knowledge of fitness. Just like teaching, or being a practitioner, being a doctor of physical therapy like I am, or being a medical doctor or an engineer, an architect is more than just having the knowledge. Now, the certification does tell you that they have sat through some level of rigor of testing. And among all those organizations, not all of those tests or certifications are equal. Now, I personally hold certifications from 3 different organizations within that listing. I have the USAW Sports Performance Coach certification, which is given by the United States Association of Weightlifting. I have a CrossFit Level 1, 2, and 3, which they call Certified CrossFit Trainer, is the level 3. I don't even know if they go by levels anymore. And then I have many certifications within CrossFit within that. And then I'm also a starting strength coach. And as you know, our listening audience, I'm also a doctor of physical therapy, and under the APTA, American Physical Therapy Association, I'm an orthopedic certified specialist. So I'm board certified in orthopedics. So, when we talk about all these different certifications, I think I can objectively speak with minimum bias. I think we all have a certain amount of bias and confirmation bias as to what we think is the best or not the best or the worst or what has the greatest value. But I think I have a pretty well-balanced view on which certification I feel was the hardest for me to not only study for and to learn, but to attain through their testing process, through the rigor of their testing examination. And I will tell you right now that bar none, out of all those organizations, the hardest for me to attain was my starting strength coach certification. And I could go into the detail of why that is, but you're just going to have to trust me there. There's a ton of testing rigor there. The educational knowledge that you have to have is very broad, both anatomy, physiology, human physics, and mechanical physics. So we would call it biophysics and mechanical physics. And then, exercise physiology and exercise science, and then some basic health science information too, along with the concepts of strength training, which would include programming, understanding how the body adapts to strength training, all these different principles. Now, second to that, I'll tell you right up front, the second hardest for me to attain was probably my certified CrossFit trainer certification, my level 3 certification, just because of the amount of testing that you have to go through to receive it. But even that was much easier than sitting for the platform exam with starting strength coaching seminars, and then also passing the essay exam. And so, with all of those examinations and certifications, those are important, but if I don't really begin to apply those principles in a proper coaching model, and if you as a consumer, if you as an athlete, a lifter, a person interested in fitness, aren't able to basically separate the difference between the technical knowledge and the scientific knowledge that is needed to adequately meet your needs as a client, from a coaching standpoint, but then also all of the things that go along with being a professional coach, the ability to teach and educate, the ability to recognize what your learner's learning style is. Are they kinesthetic? Are they, do Do they respond better to tactile cues? Do they respond better to auditory cues, verbal cues or visual cues? Are they ready to learn? Have they fully adopted or adapted to or recognized the value of what you're about to teach them? So being a coach is a lot more than just having the technical knowledge. But I think the technical knowledge is obviously the basic foundation of being a good coach. But then along with that, developing the interpersonal skills that come along with being a good coach, being able to communicate with your client base, your trainee, and reach their goals, know what their goals are, and be able to execute on delivering those goals to them and joining in a partnership to help them reach those goals. And then also developing a keen eye for human movement and for the programming, I guess you would say, all the little programming details that go along with helping your client reach their goals. So there's a lot of things that get put together here to create a good coach. So the real question is for you is, if you're hiring someone right now, whether it be in a group gym setting where you're paying for classes or whether it be in a one-on-one setting where you have a personal trainer or a coach who is doing one-on-one coaching, or whether you're doing like semi-private training, are you really getting your money's worth? And so here are some things that I think a good coach should do to ensure that you get your money's worth. Now, let me just tell you this up front. Being a good, what I would consider professional coach, which is what I think I am and a lot of my colleagues, is not about going to the gym and hanging out with your clients. That's just not coaching. You're not always your client's best friend either. And you're going to be telling your clients things sometimes, or your trainees sometimes, things that they don't want to hear. You have to be, and at the same time, you have to do it in a way so that you don't alienate your client and so that you don't damage the relationship that you're developing so that you and your trainee can both reach their goals. And so you have to maintain that relationship, yet at the same time, sometimes you have to tell them the hard things, like you're not doing the program, or I need you to grind on these reps. You're going to have to get more aggressive and get tougher, or I need you to, not lie to me about your food and what you're eating or not eating. And so sometimes you have to tell them the hard things. But I think that first of all, being a good coach is not babysitting. And if you're going to a gym and you're having a personal trainer that basically just meets you on the training floor, on the gym floor, and tells you to do some things, but they never correct your form, they never interact with you to educate you on the science of what they're doing with you. They don't necessarily lead you through your program and helping understand how the things that you're doing are going to impact your goals and how they're going to help you reach your goals. Or you're really just not seeing the results you want and they don't seem to be prioritizing your results, then I would definitely hire a new coach, because you basically got a babysitter, a very expensive babysitter at that. And so let's talk about the value of a good coach and what a good coach I think should be doing with you. Number one, a good coach should be good at helping you set goals. And sometimes that means right-sizing your expectations or helping you understand how to set what I would call micro goals and then set macro goals, bigger goals. So, it's always more effective to be able to reach some of those small goals up front. In the past, when I owned, all of our CrossFit gyms, I would have a member come up to me and say, "I'm going to the games next year, man." I was, "Man, that's awesome. It's great." But and the reality is that doesn't happen today. But, so I was very careful how I would craft my words to them. Like, "Man, that sounds great, but we got to put a bunch of foundation work in, and that could take 2 or 3 years for an excellent athlete, for someone with really good athletic potential, natural genetics. That could take 2, 3, 4, 5 years. But man, let's get that foundation in first." And so, try not to smash their goals and just crush them on the first day or the first week of training. But at the same time, present to something that's more realistic. So micro goals versus macro goals. So a good coach should help you set some goals. And also, they should be able to articulate as to how the program that you're interacting with is going to help you reach those goals. As you know, at our gym, in our gyms, we do a lot of strength training. We do a lot of barbell work. And a lot of people that have a weight loss goal might not be able to see that correlation between the fact that resistive barbell training, building lean mass, will also help them lose body fat. So I might have to help them understand that a little bit on a basic layman's term or on the science terms, be able to just relay that information to them. So number one, set good goals and right-size those expectations. Number two, a good coach should be able to articulate their programming to you. Programming meaning, what are the nuts and bolts of your fitness program? Now, some of those things are going to be things that you don't want to do, maybe. And also a good coach should know how to maybe put a couple things in there that you do want to do that hopefully would not be, that would not detract from the overreaching goal of what you're trying to do in your fitness program. Like you shouldn't be doing a ton of endurance work or even much endurance work at all if your primary goal is strength training. But there are some individuals that, they want to do a little endurance training here and there, and I let them do a little bit. So I give them a little carrot so that I can ensure that over here we're getting what we really need, and that is the strength training to start with to build that muscle mass base. And so they should be able to articulate their programming. The programming should be based on science, experience, their own experience, and they should be able to share some stories about experiences they've had with prior clients, and the results should be able to be inherent based on your intervention. In other words, if you're rocking along in the program and you're not seeing any results, then the programming needs to change. Now, there might be a period of time in there where the results are going to be minimal, but I will tell you this, if you're barbell strength training, you're going to see a ton of results on the front end. It's just the nature of the novice effect and what happens in a linear progression to the novice. They get strong really fast. And so programming is the second thing that the coach should be able to do with you. The third thing that the coach should be able to do is support training with macros, diet, and information in regards to lifestyle habits such as rest, hydration, stress management. They should be able to kind of ebb and flow your training based on what's going on in your personal and business life too. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't come in and train some days just because you had a stressful day. That might be the day where you really need to get under the bar and you might just blow yourself away as to how well you did. And then that raises your expectation level. And then all of a sudden you have a higher expectation level of yourself as to what you can really do. And that's extremely empowering when you thought you were going to have a terrible day and you just crush it. And so, they should be able to support your training in those areas and be able to give you good science-based, non-fad and gimmick-based information. So support your training with stuff outside the gym because really, let's face it, how you look is about 80 to 85%, diet. So if your diet's not dialed in and you have a weight loss goal, or if your diet's not dialed in and you have a muscle mass goal and you're not eating enough protein, then that's going to come back to bite you in the butt. So, you got to follow that information. A good coach should be able to give you that. A good coach should also, number 4, they should have a good coaching eye. In other words, while you're in your workouts, a coach should be watching your movements. And if there's no correction needed, then they should be praising you. They should be giving you, good cues. Because a lot of times, I do some online coaching, and during that time, the lifter might be dialed in, or the athlete might be dialed in what they're supposed to do. So there's really not a lot to say about that. But what I can do is promote the things that I know they're doing right, like great hip drive out of the bottom. That's a positive affirmation. I'm not correcting them. I'm just saying that I'm giving them basically a foundation to say that you're doing everything the way I want you to do, but I'm highlighting those things so that they know that I'm aware of all those different elements. And so a good coach should have a coaching eye where they can see these errors. They can see the forms, issues that are in whatever they're doing, whether it be a swimming coach for a triathlete, a running coach, a cyclist coach, cycling coach, whether it be a CrossFit coach, coach for like someone that's going to the games or wants to compete locally and they need to work on their gymnastics abilities, or whether it be a barbell coach, whatever it is, a good coach should have a good coach's eye. And they shouldn't just stand around and talk to their buddies or check their phone. Now there is some socialization in what we do, and that's fine, but what they really should be doing is coaching you. And so that would be the fourth thing. And then the last thing is a good coach should, again, not just be a babysitter, but every now and then they got to be I kind of hate to say disciplinarian, but maybe a dean. I had a dean of boys growing up that would discipline you. But they need to be basically, in some ways, they're going to have to do some discipline work with you and at the same time be a cheerleader at the same time. And that is give you positive affirmation, give you support where you need it to help you know. Because there's going to come a time when training gets really hard and where you're not maybe reaching the goals that you want to reach. And that coach should be able to motivate you and be able to say, hey, you got this. Let's just keep pushing and be able to read you as to how you're responding to that. Now, no one's perfect in that area. We all need to work on our interpersonal skills, but they ought to be working towards that. And I think when you see someone or interact with someone, especially a professional coach for your fitness, who really has your best interests in mind, if you're a fairly good read of people, you see it in them. You know that they are looking out for your best interests. So those are just some of the things that I look for in a good coach. I think a good coach also, last but not least, should be doing continuing education. They should be continuing their learning knowledge. They should be open to outside ideas. Now, I always say this phrase, and that is, what we're not up on, we're down on. So if we don't understand it, we might automatically negate it. The other thing I always say about my professional life as a doctor of physical therapy is sometimes my profession and other professions that have a very high intellect level or science level or whatever it is, a body of knowledge. If it doesn't come from within inside their own community, they have a tendency to discount its value. But there's a lot of things that I've learned outside the world of physical therapy, and there's a lot of things that I've learned outside the world of being a strength coach. And so I think a good coach should also be willing to grow their knowledge base, read journal articles that are science-based, every now and then read a book that's more motivationally oriented, read a book that's based on psychology, read a book that's based on human nature, grow themselves, and be willing to listen to other ideas and sometimes test out those ideas, but always be also looking for the answer as to what are the results for whatever we do. So, hey guys, if you're out there and you're looking for a good coach, that should give you some information. I would interview a potential coach, especially if you're looking at paying somewhere between $25, $50, $75, $100 an hour, or you're doing group training at $300 to $500 a month, whatever it is. I would look to interview that person, just like it would have you interview your physicians if you're going to have a physician that you're going to work with. Interview them, talk to them about their experience, and then get some references and talk to some of their clients. And so these are some of the things you can look for. Thanks for joining me today on talking about coach, trainer, or babysitter. And if you want to find out more information about 40Fit, you can go to 40fit.com. You can also go to our Instagram page or Instagram account, which is at 40Fit Radio. You can go to my personal Instagram, which is at DL Deaton, DEATON. You can also go to our Facebook group, which is the Facebook community group. And then you can also, to get more information on our podcast, you can go to 40Fit Radio tab on 40fit.com. And you can then hit the episodes there or go to iTunes to download it. If you like what you're hearing on the 40Fit Radio podcast, I'd ask that you share it with your friends and your family members. Share it with your coach. It'd be good for them to listen to this episode. And also send us some information on what you'd like to hear about topically. If there's other things that you'd like to hear on the podcast, send it to us in our email at info@40fit.com. Or you can send it to my coaching email, which is coach@FTW, that's Frank Tom William Strength.com. And we'd love to hear if you have other topics that you would like to have question and answers on, or you'd like to hear talked about in our podcast. So thanks for joining the 40Fit Nation, and we'll see you next time.